Today, we are concluding a series of messages that we've entitled New Point of View, believing that God gives a new point of view, a new perspective, a new way of seeing things based on the narrative of Easter, the life, the death, the burial, the resurrection, the ascension of Jesus, that in his life, he gave a very real reason for people to see things from a new point of view. In fact, Easter Sunday is something we celebrate all of the Sundays and all of the days and all of the weeks and all of the years. Jesus isn't just alive to be remembered one day of the year because the calendar says so. He's alive today, and because he lives, we have reason to face tomorrow with confidence. He continues to give us a new point of view. And today, I want to share a message that I believe will help us to see the love that God has for us from a new point of view. We're going to look at a character named Peter. Now in the Bible, Peter, he's made reference to quite a bit. He's a significant character in the story of the Gospels. He's one of Jesus' friends and disciples. He goes on to be the first leader of the church to stand boldly on the day of Pentecost and proclaim the life and the resurrection of Jesus. Peter is such a significant character that we can't reference everything that happened in his life in one message. But what I want to specifically do is look at Peter's life and through a lens where we perhaps could see the love that God has for us and the love that he is beckoning us to from a new point of view. If you're taking notes today, the message is entitled Love, Love, Love. You ever, you got a new pair of shoes, a new outfit, a new idea, a new business plan, a new creative venture, and somebody who cares about you goes, oh, I love, love, love. I love that for you. That's perfect. It fits you well. It makes sense. It's just right. It's lovely, and it's beautiful. We're going to look at the story of Peter, one of love, love, love. I had finished preparing this message and titled it Love, 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 and I thought it might be kind of fun to see some of the suggestions that ChatGPT might have on what this could be named. And so I put in a few prompts and I said a message about this with this topic. What would you name it? Well, ChatGPT came up with some okay names, like Peter, the story of love and reinstatement. I'm like, Peter, the story of love. Shared a few other ones. And then it said this, would you like some that are edgier? I said, well, yes, ChatGPT. As a matter of fact, I would. And then it began to go back and forth with me, trying to answer me what it assumed I might want to hear. I don't know if you've ever used ChatGPT in this sort of a way, but it's sort of funny how quickly it becomes a reflection of exactly what the assumption would be you want to hear. And so ChatGPT said this, say less. You want the real edgy, street level, bold, non-churchy polish? Here's a batch that are even grittier. Just thought I'd share with you some of these wonderful, gritty, edgy suggestions. Suggestions like this, back from the dead, still chosen. How about this one? He saw my mess and still said yes. This one's great. A little sports crossover. 3 strikes, still in the game. Love don't fold, denied, doubted, and delivered, built from brokenness. And then it said this. It said, after hearing these, would you like to hear some that might be a straight lyric from a Drake album? Or Kendrick Lamar, or even Lecrae? I can show you the dialogue. It was pretty great. I said, Chat, I want to. Let me hear a few others. Flopped on Friday, forgiven on Sunday. Like I could hear that in a Kendrick Lamar album. How about this one? Ain't no quitting this love. Okay, you didn't like that one? That's okay, we got more. How about this one? Love that don't flinch. This was maybe my favorite. Fumbled hard, forgiven harder. That had nothing to do with anything. I just thought it was pretty funny. I stuck with love, love, love. You see, Peter, much like each of us, was working out what the purpose of his life might be. For most of us, that begins with, how can I make it in this life to make sure that I have a place to live and I have food to eat? If those things exist, we start working perhaps towards things like, do I like what I'm doing? Do I enjoy this? Do I see a longer future? But in truth, we're starting with, how can I take care of my basic needs? Well, Peter took care of those needs through the trade of fishing. We pick up Peter's story in the book of Luke chapter 5. If you could turn there in your Bible. The other Gospels record this as well. I'm going to look at Luke's version. It says this: one day, as Jesus was standing by the lake of Gennesaret, the people were crowded around him, listening to the word of God. He saw at the water's edge there was 2 boats left there by the fishermen who were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, and he asked him, "Would you put out a little from shore?" Then he sat down, he taught the people from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Now put out into deeper water and let down the nets for a catch." Simon answered, "Master, we've worked hard all night. We haven't caught anything, but because you say so, I will let down the nets." When they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. And so they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help, and they began to fill both boats so full that they both began to sink. Then Simon Peter saw this. He fell at Jesus' knees and he said, "Go away from me, Lord. I'm a sinful man." For he and his companions were astonished at the catch of fish that they had taken. And so were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who were Simon's partners. Then Jesus said to Simon, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you will fish for people." And so they pulled their boats up to the shore. They left everything and they followed him. This first reference to Peter's life, we see what his perspective and his point of view was on this interaction and the love that Jesus had for him. After a night of fishing and fishing unsuccessfully, he found himself at the shore washing his nets. Do we have any fishermen or fisherwomen in the room? We got some anglers in the room. Okay, we got a couple. Most of them are out fishing today. It makes sense. But here we are. I think fishing is often more about the process than about the catch. When you talk to people about their love for fishing, I just like, get out there in nature. Get out there with the boys, get out with the people. And so it's, about the boys and the people and the nature. And you're like, I think you just like friends. That makes sense. You like friends and nature. It makes sense in the process. But for Peter, this was his livelihood. And after an unsuccessful night, he's on the shore. He's cleaning his nets. Nothing had been caught. There's like some seaweed, maybe a rubber boot. They're pulling these things out of their nets. It just so happens that there's a group of people around because Jesus is there. Can't help but wonder if it was a little embarrassing to be there and people are like, "Hey, how'd you do?" Like today, every person who walked by from the sun run, I'm like, "What's your time?" And they probably all lied about their time. Like, "I did great, 30 minutes. Like, no, you didn't. People are walking by like, "How was the catch?" Like, yeah, just one of those days, And they're cleaning out their nets. Unsuccessful as they were, and there's Jesus on the shore. He's just talking about life. Pretty amazing thing. Jesus, he's just sharing. And when he speaks, it's truth. And the truth that he speaks is full of grace. And the grace that he brings is abounding in such a way that out of the fullness of his grace, we all receive grace upon grace. And so a crowd is gathering. And Jesus decides to step off the shoreline and into Simon Peter's boat. And he goes, "Hey man, I know you're cleaning your nets. Can we just go out a little bit further? I'm getting tired of standing. I'd rather sit." And so they go out, and Peter's happy to drop his nets, or not. We don't know. We don't know how he is emotionally. I would assume he was maybe happy because later when Jesus gave him an instruction, he refers to him as master. I would assume that he's probably a little bit like, "Oh, this is pretty cool. Here we are. Jesus is getting pretty popular. He wants to sit in my boat. Can't help but wonder if he looked over at James and John, who we know were very competitive, and he's like, guess whose boat he picked, boys? And there he was. It says he sat upon his boat just a little bit out into the shallows, and Jesus sat and he taught. A crowd of people are gathered around. All of a sudden, Peter's day sort of changed. It was a day that marked a failure of a catch, but he knew, I'll be here again tomorrow. And just the way things go sometimes as a fisherman. But after Jesus taught, he challenges Peter to a different type of action. He says, now let's go deeper. And when we go deeper, drop your nets again. There had to be a part of Peter going like, okay, great teacher and all. I've heard you're a killer carpenter. You make a great chair. I'm a fisherman. Like, I kind of know how this thing works. We were unsuccessful. But for whatever reason, Peter bites his tongue because he respects Jesus. He's like, for you, no problem. Yeah, I'll put the nets down. It's okay. And so he puts down the nets again. You got to wonder if James and John are like, what are you doing, Peter? Those are going to have to be cleaned again. He puts down the net, and so many fish are caught that they're all astonished. He's calling over his friends. They're getting into their boat. They're scrambling out. The nets, he's like, dude, the nets are breaking. Biggest catch we've ever had. They're filling both boats, and both boats are sinking. They're overwhelmed by the blessing that they've just received. And what's Peter's first response? His first response is to recognize what a failure he is. His first response, he falls at Jesus' feet, and he goes, you need to leave. I am such a sinner. What an interesting response. I guess it exposes the way that the world thinks about love and blessing. That we get what we deserve. That when good things happen, it's because we are innately good. And when bad things happen, it must be that somebody somewhere did something bad and they're also getting what they deserve. It builds a strange kind of pride within us, doesn't it? That when we're good, we feel we've earned it. And when things go bad, we get mad at the injustice that we're facing. But what Peter does immediately is acknowledge, the more you get to know me, the less you're going to like me. You should leave now. You see, the truth is that that's not the way God sees things. Jesus determined from day one that his ministry would involve time with people. It says he called and appointed disciples for two core reasons. One, that he might spend time with them, and two, that he might send them out. Do you know what's God's desire and heart? To commune with you, to spend time with you, to develop a relationship with you, to have a friendship with you. And it's also the purpose of God to send you out and to live a life that's full of purpose. I'm not talking about a life where you make ends meet, you have food in your tummy and a roof over your head. I'm talking about a life that is flowing with purpose, a life of overabundance, a life of absolute blessing. What Peter experienced in that day is, I'm too blessed for this. I don't deserve this catch of fish. It's super embarrassing. You're going to get to know me, and then you're going to be like, hey, I need you to pay me back for those fish because you, my good sir, are a sinner. Well, Jesus gives him a whole new point of view. He goes, hey, Peter, how about this? Start following me, and I'm gonna have you experience this type of blessing, but instead of just being transactional where you can sell fish for food, you're going to affect the lives of people. Peter is so overwhelmed by this new point of view that he drops everything, including the boats, including the nets, including the fish. And he follows Jesus. He left what would have been to that day his most successful blessing to follow Jesus. Jesus was not his last resort. He left something that would have been pretty lucrative and pretty good to follow Jesus. And his life with Jesus continued to have some ups and some downs, probably similar to ours. It was Peter who, along with the other disciples, got front row access to the things that Jesus taught. Not only did he get front row, he also got backstage. Because after Jesus would explain it to the crowds, he'd be like, hey, boys, let's go hang out now. And then they'd go hang out and be like, what do you think of that story? Like, it was good. Like, sheep and seeds, I liked it. He's like, did you understand it? They're like, like the sheep part and the seeds part. And Jesus is like, okay, let me explain it to you. And he would give meaning to his stories to his disciples. He'd say, here's what this represents in the story. And here's what this represents in the story. So Peter, along with his friends, had a whole bunch of like, oh, wow moments. It was Peter and his disciples who got to be with Jesus the day he broke bread and broke fish and gave it to a crowd, and then one little lunch fed thousands of people. It was Peter, along with the disciples, who got to watch Jesus quiet storms and heal the eyes of blind people and straighten the limbs of those who were lame. It was Peter, along with his disciples, who one day got in a boat and they crossed that very same sea that this miracle of fish happened. They made it to a place called the Decapolis, where there was a man who was demonized by a legion of demons, and they watched Jesus set this guy free and send him out with purpose, and then Jesus was like, okay, let's go. It was Peter, along with a couple of choice disciples, James and John, just the three of them, that at different times Jesus would be like, hey guys, come with me now. The rest of you will be right back. And he showed them this like more intimate types of miracles. Like a day there was this 12-year-old girl who was dead, and Jesus went and he said, she's not dead. She's just sleeping. Little girl, get up. And she got back up, and her parents were amazed and astonished. It was Peter, along with James and John, who had this opportunity this one day at a place called the Transfiguration. They went up on a mountain, and Jesus goes, guys, like you're my inner circle. You are my close friends. I want to introduce you to a few of my other friends. This is Moses. And Peter, James, and John are like, what, like the Moses? He's like, yeah, the Moses, lived thousands of years ago, greatest leader of all time, the most humble guy, I must say. And Moses is like, oh, I love that. In the Bible, Moses writes, Moses was the most humble man who ever lived. He had to be like, oh, God, please don't make me write this. And God's like, no, it's true. And he's like, aw. He's like, and this over here, this is Elijah. And like the Elijah? Yeah. The Elijah, he stood up. This guy stood up when the whole nation was unrighteous. He stood up, and God was so pleased with him, he set a chariot of fire down. Instead of dying, he just descended to heaven. Guys, Elijah, Moses, come over here. This is Peter. This is James. This is John. They had to be awed and amazed. Peter got to live this life. He's so pumped in this moment. He's like, I finally found my tribe. I found my crew. It's just me, James and John, I guess. They have to be around here. But I got my boy Jesus. I got Moses. Got Elijah. We should just hang here. He goes, guys, let me build you some houses. Let's just hang out here. We got the perfect friend group right now. There had to be this little part of Peter where he's like, I kind of find my fit here. I'm kind of earning this a little bit. I sort of deserve this a bit. It was Peter who had a moment with Jesus where they're in a storm and Jesus is walking out on water. And it's Peter who goes, God, if this is you, call me out. And Jesus is like, okay, if you want to. He gets out on the water. He's like, guys, I'm walking on water. Until he sees the waves beside him, he starts to sink. And Jesus picks him up and he goes, hey, Peter, pretty short-term faith, eh? You believed me back in the boat there. You only made it a couple steps. You have little faith. So Peter had to be in that moment a little like, okay, I learned a new boundary. I pushed a little too hard there. It wasn't the only time Jesus pushed back on Peter. There was this other time where Peter is the guy who goes, Jesus, because of you, I will forgive 7 times. And Jesus goes, Peter, let's just bump that up a little bit to 70 times 7. He's like, oh, so close. It was Peter who had a moment with Jesus where he goes, you are not just a good teacher. You are not just a prophet. You're not just a miracle worker, you're God. And Peter goes, or Jesus goes, hey guys, we're not calling him Simon anymore. This is Big Pete. He's the rock, And he's like, I got a new name. He goes, I'm going to build the church on you, Peter. I'm going to build my whole purpose and legacy on that type of conviction, that type of confession. You're going to change the world. Peter got a little full of himself Because the very next thing he says to Jesus, Jesus goes, now that you're in this kind of mission, I want you to know, it costs. The love that I have for people is going to cost. I'm going to give my life up. And Peter goes, no, you won't. Jesus looks at him, he's like, I know I just called you Peter, but now you're acting more like Satan. Fall back. You got to start following me again. Don't get out ahead of me. See that first day on the water, he's like, follow me. And all throughout life, he's like, follow me. Just keep following me. Keep following me. Keep following me. We're going to go deeper. We're going to go deeper. Okay, that's far enough. Keep following me. It was Peter who at the Last Supper, when Jesus, he took bread and he broke it, and he looked at his friends, Peter, James, John, the rest of the crew. He goes, I'm about to be broken for you. I love you guys. I'm going to have my blood spilled for you. Because I love you guys. And I don't love you because you've earned it or you've deserved it. In fact, you're going to all scatter and deny me. And Peter stands up. He goes, these guys might, but I won't. There's probably a reason that James and John were a little competitive when they had a guy like Peter in their friend group. He's always throwing them under the bus. Like, these guys will all deny you, but not me. I'm him. I'm that guy. I'm built different. Maybe ChatGPT did have a few good ideas. He's like, I love you so much, I'll never fail. Don't we have that perspective sometimes? That somehow what we feel inside will fuel us to never make a mistake again. And Jesus says to Peter, in fact, Peter, today, like it's nighttime right now, today, before the rooster crows, because it's morning, like while it's still nighttime, today, you're going to deny me 3 times. And Peter doesn't believe it. And Jesus is like, hey, even though you're going to deny me, you will. You'll see. I'm still breaking my body for you. I'm still shedding my blood for you. Here, have some. I'm still the guy who got down and washed your feet today, even though I knew before the day would pass, you would deny me 3 times. Later that day in the garden, soldiers come. Peter, he's the guy, he gets up with a sword. He goes, I told you I'd never deny you, Lord. And he cuts off one of their ears. And Jesus is like, Peter, too much. He heals this guy's ear. Peter's like, oh, at least I proved it. Has anyone ever felt like you're in a constant cycle of trying to prove yourself? Has anyone ever felt in your faith like you're just constantly trying to prove that you really do deserve the purpose God has for your life? That you really do deserve the love that God has extended for you? That yes, you used to feel like it was unearned, but now that you've got the love of God, you're constantly just trying to prove it through grand, bold gestures? Well, much like Jesus said, that very day, he's brought by the Sanhedrin before a mockery of a trial. He's found guilty of a crime they say is worthy of death. And they begin to jeer him and mock him and beat him. And before he goes to the cross, Peter finds himself in a series of conversations where indeed, just like Jesus said, he denies him. Look what it says in Luke chapter 22. I'm just trying to give you the story arc of Peter's life so you can see the effect that this love that Jesus had for him had. Look at this, Luke chapter 22 and verse 60. It says, Peter now the 3rd time replies to someone who's like, hey, you're Jesus' friend, right? And he goes, man, I don't know what you're talking about. And just as he was speaking, the rooster crows. And it says this, the Lord turned and he looked straight at Peter. They're in the same room. They're in the same room where Jesus is being beaten and mocked and jeered, and they've started heaping abuse on him. And someone's like, hey, aren't you his friend? Why aren't you standing with him? And he's like, that guy? I don't know what you're talking about. That guy? I don't know him. That guy, man, I don't know what you're talking about. The rooster crows, and Peter remembers the words Jesus has spoken. He looks over at Jesus, and Jesus is looking right back at him like, yeah. I don't know what to tell you. It says this, Peter remembers the words, before the rooster crows today, you will disown me 3 times. And he went outside and he wept bitterly. Have you ever been there? Have you ever felt that feeling? I did it again. I thought I was better than this. I was even trying. I lied. I lost my cool. I got lazy again. I went back to that same vice. I know what it feels like, and I did it again. I should be better than this. He wept bitterly. If there was a mirror nearby, Peter's looking in that mirror going, "You loser. You're supposed to be the rock. What are you thinking? How could you do? Man, you've walked on water before. What are you doing? You've met Moses." And again, he's brought right back to that initial feeling where he's like, I don't deserve this. His first call from Jesus, his weakness is exposed. He's like, oh, I don't deserve blessing. Over the course of time, perhaps he began to believe, I kind of deserve this. And again, in failure, he's like, he's weeping bitterly. And it must have only gotten more bitter. Because some hours later, they come like, hey, yeah, Pilate didn't save him. They took him to Golgotha. He's like, oh my goodness. It's too late to do anything. Have you ever replayed what you should have done or would have said? You're like in the shower shampooing. You're like, if I was in that situation again, I know the exact thing I would say. It's one thing when it's a interesting little conversation. It's another thing where you feel like I can never go back and I can never change it. I'm stuck with that as my reputation, with that as my character, with that as my failure. He's weeping bitterly. And they go, hey, Peter, I hate to tell you, man, Jesus just said it's finished. They're taking him to Joseph of Arimathea's tomb. He's gone. And Peter's like, he was my best friend and I let him down. He was right there and he looked at me and, I'm so ashamed. And Saturday goes on and he's just living in that. Have you felt that? You been there? And then Sunday morning, Mary Magdalene comes back from the tomb. She's scrambling. She's like, I don't know if they moved his body. I don't know exactly what happened. He's not there. And the book of John records it. Check this out. John chapter 20. You've got to hear the way John puts it. John, the one that Jesus loved and the one who was super competitive, writes this. Early the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and she saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciples, the one that Jesus loved. And she said, they've taken the Lord out of the tomb. We don't know where they've put him. So Peter and the other disciples started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran him. John's just including, I'm faster than Peter. Jesus may have chosen Peter's boat, but I'm faster on foot. It said he outran Peter and he reached the tomb first. He bent over, he looked in, he saw strips of linen lying there, but he didn't go in. Finally, when Simon Peter came along behind him, he went straight into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus' head. The cloth was still lying in place and separated from the linen. Finally, the other disciple, who had reached the tomb first. John mentions it 3 times that he's fast. It's like, John, we get it. You do the sun run for fun. Okay. He also went inside. He saw and he believed. But they still didn't understand the scripture that Jesus had risen from the dead, so the disciples went back to where they were staying. They're confused. They're uncertain. They're unsure. They have maybe the sparks, the beginnings of hope, maybe just a little bit of foggy sort of understanding. They're like, I know he was laid here. He's not here. Peter's still replaying and recounting what he had done, how he had said it. The last moment, he's like, if I could just go back and do it again, I'd be like, yeah, I'm with Jesus, and I would have just gone at least stood with him. Like, I would have really stood there. I did nothing. And over the course of some days, not knowing what to do, they just returned to their old purpose. Look at it. It says this in chapter 21. It says, afterwards, Jesus appeared again to the disciples by the Sea of Galilee. That is also called the Sea of Gennesaret. It happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, known as Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, that's John and James, and two other disciples. John doesn't even remember. He's like, I don't know. There was some other guys there too. We didn't really like those guys. We never asked them their name. They said that Simon says this, I'm going to go fishing. Like, I'm just going to return to what I know. I'll just go back to what I used to do. It's as if he's like, maybe this 3 years was just kind of a little blip. I'll just return, just go back. So Simon told them, they said, hey, yeah, we'll go with you. So they went out, they got into the boat, but by that night they caught nothing. Sound familiar? Early the next morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize it was Jesus. He called out to them, friends, haven't you any fish? Kind of an awkward thing to ask a fisherman, right? Like, thanks for putting us on blast. The answer, no. Bad night. They're on their way in to clean their nets, as would be the case when you just have had a failure of a night. But Jesus says, why don't you try throwing your nets on the right side of the boat? Then you'll find some. They're like, yeah, man, because that's how fishing works. All the fish are on the right side, not the left. For whatever reason, they listen. I kind of wonder if it was maybe a little nostalgia. Peter's like, reminds me of that time where irrationally, geez, for old time's sake, let's just do it. Like, remember that time? Those are the days. Fishing was fun back then. Now it feels like the consolation prize. They throw the nets over onto the right side. And sure enough, they're unable to haul the nets in because of the large number of fish. Then the disciples, the one that Jesus loved, Peter, or John, I should say, the fast one, he said, Peter, that's the Lord. As soon as Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he wrapped his outer garment around him that he had taken off. He jumped into the water and he swam to shore. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish. So they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. When they landed, they saw a fire. There was burning coals there. There was fish on it and some bread. And then Jesus said to them, hey, bring some of your fish. It's interesting because he already had fish. He already had all they need. He's like, sure, yeah, bring your stuff. That's great. He had already prepared for them something. They come to the fire, and Simon Peter climbs back into the boat. He drags the nets ashore. Says it was full of large fish, 153. You know it's a fisherman's story. He's counted the fish. They weren't small fish. They were large fish. But even with so many, their nets didn't tear. Kind of interesting that the first time their nets tore, this time they didn't. We can talk about that another day. But Jesus said to them, come, have breakfast. None of the disciples dared ask him, who are you? They knew it was Jesus. So Jesus came, he took the bread and he gave it to them. They knew it was Jesus as he breaks bread. The last time he had done so was in the Last Supper when he's like, I'm not going to do this again until I break my body for you. And then he takes fish that he had prepared and he hands it. They're all like, remember that time that you multiplied food? Like they're sharing a moment. But there's still awkwardness because the last time Peter and Jesus talked, Peter denied him 3 times. He's still living in the echo effect, the shadow of his failure. I don't know if you feel this. Sometimes you find yourself in church, you're worshiping, and all you're thinking about is your failures. You go to open your Bible and you're like, but I've made so many mistakes recently. You think about praying and the first thing on your mind is like, I don't even know if I'm the type of person that God would want to listen to anymore after all the stuff I've done and said. Someone's like, hey, you should come to church. You're like, I don't know. Lightning might strike. So Peter and Jesus have a little private moment. When they finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, you know I love you. It's kind of interesting because the last time they talked, Peter's like, the others might fail you, but I won't. This time he's not like, I love you way more than these. He goes, yeah, you know I love you. Then Jesus said, then feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And he answered, yes, Lord, you know I love you. Then take care of my sheep. Then a third time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter, who was now hurt because Jesus kept asking him for a third time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Then Jesus said, then feed my sheep. Very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and you went where you wanted. But when you're older, they will stretch out your hands and someone else will take you where they want to lead you. Jesus then said this to indicate the kind of death in which Peter would glorify God. And he said to him, follow me. The same words he had said that first day on that same shore. The same words he had said that first day after a miraculous catch that Peter did not deserve. Follow me. The same words spoken again. Follow me. Peter turned and saw that the disciple whom Jesus loved was also following them. This is the one who had leaned back against Jesus at the supper and said, Lord, who's going to betray you? When Peter saw him, he said, Lord, what about him? And Jesus answered, if I want him to remain until I return, what is it to you? You must follow me. Let me give us 3 quick conclusions. What happened in this story? Without the story arc, the story is just an interesting story. When you see that story arc, it's pretty miraculous the way that God, by love, had continued to break down Peter's paradigm, the same paradigm that we live in. We get what we deserve. When we've failed, we also get what we deserve. I shouldn't be more blessed than I'm worthy of. And when I fail, I'm not worthy of any sort of blessing. And here we have Jesus. Number 1, it's love that reinstates purpose. Jesus sits with Peter and he doesn't say, so Peter, what have you learned from your failure? He doesn't say, Peter, what do you know to be true? He doesn't say, Peter, let's look at your deeds and we'll measure good ones and bad ones and we'll see what score you have. He just simply says this, where's your heart at? Do you love me? Do you love me? Like, do you really love me? And if I have your heart, we're good. Sometimes our actions fall short, but do I have your heart? Do you love me? In writing of this story, the early church fathers have some really interesting things to say. Chrysostom says this, the thrice repeated question and answer is a remedy for Peter's triple denial. And the command to feed the sheep is the great trust that Jesus was committing to him. Thomas Aquinas spoke this. He says that in this interaction we see that there are degrees to love. Because what Jesus phrases to him is, do you love me? He used the word agape, which means the type of love that will sacrifice for. He's like, do you love me enough to sacrifice for me? And Peter, being humbled and honest, goes, I love you. He uses a different word, phileo, like we're bros. And Jesus goes, okay, but do you love me enough to sacrifice for me? And Peter again goes, yeah, we're bros. I love you, phileo. The third time, Jesus says, do you love me like bro? And Peter goes, yeah, I do. Aquinas says this, that God meets us at the level of our love and reminds us that his goal is to perfect us in love along the way. That charity is the theological virtue that grows over time. In the very same way, Jesus' first request to Peter was, can we go a little ways out into water? And only after going out a little ways, he goes, let's go deeper. Can we go deeper? And only after going deeper, he goes, why don't you throw out your net? And only after catching fish does he go, why not catch people instead? You see, Jesus is constantly beckoning us deeper, and he begins with where we're at today. The question that God would pose to you and I today is, do you love me? Well, yeah. It's not easy to just think about like giving everything. And he goes, yeah, but will you join me there? Meet me there. Isn't that interesting? That is love that reinstates purpose. That what God is looking to establish our purpose is a statement of love. Origen, the church father, said this: Peter, who once fell through fear, now stood by love. Cyril of Alexandria said, Christ heals the pain of the fall by compelling him to make amends with his tongue. 3 times he said, I don't know him. And so 3 times Jesus walks him back through the process. Like, use your mouth. Do you love me? Yes, Lord, I love you. It was cool. Do you love me? Yes, Lord, I love you. Awesome. Do you love me? Yeah, I love you. And the same way he had used his tongue to deny him 3 times, he now used his mouth to heal and to be restored back to his purpose. Maybe today you find yourself weeping bitterly because you know you've fallen short of the love of God. You know you've missed the mark. You know that your actions haven't aligned with the type of blessing that God has given you. He's been so good and you've fallen so far short. I want you to know today it's not your effort, your striving, your perfection that reinstates God's purpose. It's love. Number 2, love leads to mission. Jesus says, if you love me, words, then love the thing I love, people. It's impossible theologically to love God and hate his people. It's impossible for us to sit back and go, I love God. It's just, his purpose on earth, his church, people. Oh, it's the worst. If we love God, we love people. If we love God, our love deepens in us and we're beckoned deeper from shallow waters to deeper waters by showing and expressing love and kindness to people. Augustine said this: let us love our shepherd that we may be his sheep, and let us love him with a love such that we feed his sheep. Let's love God, who's a good shepherd, so much that we become the ones he's caring for. And then let's love the people he cares for so much that we can be a part of that. If we had time today, we'd look at what Peter says in 1 Peter when he says, of pastors and shepherds, people who care for, he goes, hey, you did what God wanted you to do, not because you had to, but because you were willing. Now continue to feed God's flock that is under your care, watching over them. This is Peter, whose life is totally changed. His mission is reinstated. Number 3, love casts out fear. This is a story of Jesus remedying fear in his life. You might not notice it, but Peter's first response when Jesus blessed him was a response of fear. I'm not good enough. You need to leave. Peter's response throughout was a response of fear. I don't want to lose what we've got, so don't go and suffer. I don't want to lose what we've got. Let's stay on this mountain of transfiguration. I don't want to lose what we got. I'll take a sword to defend it. He continued to be motivated by fear. And then in a moment of denial, he feared and feared and feared over and over again. But in this moment, Jesus goes, do you love me? I do. Then live for my purpose. Do you love me? I do. Then live for my purpose. Do you love me? I do. Then live for my purpose. And it's going to cost you your life. It'll cost you everything. And Peter's response is, well, what about him? Interestingly, I think another message could point out how quickly we go to comparison. What about John? He gets everything. He's faster, doesn't have to suffer. But I actually think Peter was probably just trying to calibrate again. He goes, okay, I should die because I failed. What about John? John was good. Does John get a different story? What's John's story? He's trying to figure out the scoring system. And Jesus again is going, no, Peter, just follow me. Just follow me. You don't have to be fearful of what you've earned or how you've deserved. Just follow me. And it was Peter who a few days later, when empowered by the Holy Spirit, stood up in the same city in front of the same crowd that had chanted for Jesus' death. And he said, the reason we're standing here today is to declare that Jesus is alive. And he incited a revival. It was Peter who just a few days later was brought before the same Sanhedrin, who had the same mock trial in the same room where he had denied Jesus. And this time he said, who should I listen to, man or God? I'm going with God. It was the same Peter who from that moment forward lived his whole life for the purpose of God. What motivated the change? Just love. Love, love, love.